I don't normally do introductions for Super Claims episodes, but I feel like it's important for this one. I will be delving into the topic of depression and touching on mental illness through the lens of Morden Insurance, a results-oriented monopoly that views people as disposable. What follows purposefully twists conventional wisdom and attempts to poke fun at how our society sometimes seems to view mental illness, but I trust you know where your own line is for this topic. You are the best judge of what is and is not tasteless or harmful to you. I only hope that my content is neither of those things. Anyway, intro over, on with the cold open. Did you know blood is thicker than water, but ink is thicker than both? Make sure to read the fine print carefully when participating in Morden's blood and water drives, because both organizations are equipped to handle either resource one way or the other. And welcome to Super Claims. Listeners, have you ever felt burnt out? Maybe the boss is asking for more than your usual standard, or perhaps it's your 27th time doing the same task. Perhaps your family member is proving to be more of a burden than usual, and you yearn only to escape back to the comfortable, safe offices of your employer. Whatever the cause, you've successfully related to our hard-working psychic heroes in the field, a category of heroes unique for its high rates of early retirement and motivational issues. It's been an ongoing concern for us at Morden Insurance, so I was approached to talk about these issues and give our beloved and very necessary extrasensory perceivers the push to keep on doing what they do to keep everything working smoothly. I'm not what you would call an expert on psychics, hero work, or imbalances in the brain, but I am quite the old hand at motivation and getting out there to do your work. So I'll be throwing in a few helpful tips along with Morden Insurance's expert advice. Before that, though, let's really get into what I mean when I say there's an epidemic with our psychic heroes. Per our own studies and interviews with espers considering retirement, their particular method of working is often repetitive, leading to a feeling of days blending with each other and causing a disquieted mind during their valuable hero and civilian duties. As one interviewee said, "I've heard so many thoughts, seen with the same emotions and assumptions time and again that it's all become routine. I don't even see anyone as a person anymore, just problems to be solved. I can't be with people, and I can't be alone anymore." This is incorrect thinking at its most blatant, and it's important to see it at its roots and pull it right out. Try interrupting thoughts like that before they get out of hand. It'll help you in the long term. Morden Insurance also recommends channeling those thoughts into a less emotional direction, perhaps one that stops worrying so much about the person and more about the problem. Why call a problem a person when you can call it by its correct title? A villain! Perhaps a practical example could be helpful here. Back in the early 2000s, there was a prominent hero who called herself Generify. With the distinct honor of being S-Class, her calling card was both terrifying and exceedingly powerful, forcing her opponents to forget their powers. People who could once fly found themselves walking. The super strong became like kittens. Even other espers had no chance against her, for she became exceedingly efficient with her ability. Which makes it all the more surprising that her career was as short-lived as it was. The world was shocked to discover that she had retired at the young age of 26. It certainly came as a shock to us at Morden Insurance, but in hindsight, with our advancements in our knowledge of the brain, the signs were there. First, we've come to realize that many of her opponents found themselves permanently hobbled. Even those who could remember what their powers were found themselves utterly unable to tap into it. And for those with physical abilities, they had trouble with use of their affected limbs. It's suspected that she had gotten into contact with her former opponents, and it developed into a case of shell shock. Now, at the time, we weren't aware of the shell shock that some heroes experienced near the end of their careers. She was a young woman, and fairly hot-headed in interviews and on the field, so her behavior before retirement was chalked up to hysterics. Which leads me to my second point, that she was rattled to the core. That kind of trauma settles deep into a person's mind, especially in espers for some reason. and she seemed tired all the time. Hers is an odd case, though. Unlike a lot of other heroes who pursue retirement, she seemed quite jovial in those last years. Generify was always happy to crack a few jokes, and she loved to bring others into the spotlight with her, and that never changed. She was so modest, too, always keeping the focus on her coworkers instead of letting herself get too prideful. Heck, she managed to make her own award ceremony about the Patriot when he presented her with the Rising Star Award. Really a class act. Linda Ehrman. What a hero. I feel like I could use a bit of a pick-me-up. In fact, this is a great opportunity for a few of my tricks and tips for folks who might be feeling a little down. So if you're feeling a bit down in the dumps and depressed, let's try a few of my own exercises that I've curated over the years. So I like to start the day with an affirmation. Just a little set of sayings that remind me that I am someone with value and worth. It's a little embarrassing to be talking about it like this, but what the heck. So it goes, I am good enough, I am likable enough, and gosh darn it, I'm employed and thus contribute to society in a measurable and respected way. Honestly, I feel better just saying it now. I usually say that about 20 to 50 or so times while I get ready for work in the morning. It's not super common, but sometimes I have those downer mornings, where I just feel like staying in bed and getting a few extra minutes of sleep. Or maybe I feel like skipping a few brushes on the mandatory 150 brush strokes per Morden Insurance's employee expectations. But I just have to grit my teeth and remind myself that it's gotta get done, and then I just take care of it like it's my job. You just can't get a proper preparation in without those 2 hours a morning. Alright, that takes care of problems with how you see yourself, issues feeling motivated, self-confidence. I don't see what this has to do with shell shock. I guess sometimes they say they feel depressed, and I get that getting past those sad feelings is hard. Try finding a ritual that you can really lose yourself in the next time that depression starts getting a little too heavy. I often find that getting lost in a niche clause of the Morden Insurance code can just take me to another world for a while, one where I come back refreshed and informed. Well, I hope those tips will help you get over those feelings and get back to doing what we all need you for. We value our Esper heroes deeply, and we need those unique skills that only you can bring. Just in case it isn't enough, though, here's another useful tip from Morden Insurance. When you're having unpleasant or unproductive thoughts about yourself or your future, don't think those thoughts. That's one you hear all the time here. I was like that for a while, worried about little details in cases, or thinking of ways that maybe Morden could do things, differently. But you eventually learn that there's kind of a switch in your head you can just turn off. Or maybe think of it like a dresser. Just take those feelings and pack them away for a while. Maybe forever. I haven't thought about... I lost my place. Sorry about that, listeners. I suppose this is a good time to talk about another famous psychic anyways. You've no doubt seen her name on your sleep meds, or possibly heard one of her guided meditations. It's the Vapors, the independent city entrepreneur and technical A-rank villain. Like many psychics, she picked up on her abilities early and used them for personal gain. She eventually specialized in causing the brain to enter REM sleep on command, an ability that served her quite well when she was making her initial fortune. Despite being an A-rank villain, no real fights were ever recorded against her. And due to her non-violent crimes and almost pacifist use of her abilities, she never required a stronger response from the society of superpowered individuals. By the time she was 24, she'd grown tired of her life of villainy, no pun intended, and shifted her focus towards her legacy. Vapors gained a staggering knowledge of how the brain processes sleep and specific chemicals, and she revolutionized the study of sleep by the time she was in her 30s. What had once been a modest fortune in the low millions became an empire, currently worth billions. The world eventually learned her birth name, Susan Cleary, when her autobiography was published, shortly after her retirement. One section in particular sticks out to me, which reads, "It's a shame, but money doesn't change you as much as you'd hope. Sure, it makes you hungry for more, and god damn does it make life comfy, but it doesn't fill that hole in you by itself. It always reminded me of an old TV that's turned on, but it's not showing anything. You can hear that it's on, but nobody else seems to, and you're not sure if you're crazy for being the only person that's bothered, but everybody keeps telling you not to turn it off, or to focus on something else instead. Well, I've tried my distractions. I got what I'm supposed to get. Now I'm going to turn that fucking thing off. Well, I've never been entirely sure where she's going with the TV thing. I never heard where that sound is, but she's got a good point in there despite all that cursing. Villainy and the pursuit of wealth for its own sake never makes you whole by itself. It's the friends you meet along the way. Speaking of, another hot tip from Morden Insurance. If you start to find yourself feeling a bit stuck in your life as an Esper, maybe like you're not sure where you're going or why you're doing things, try a change of hats. You'd be surprised how many people you meet and how many skills you pick up with a change of careers. And maybe the new perspective will help your existence feel a bit less pointless. Pointless? That seems like a harsh way to put it. Let's try rephrasing that to short term. Research has shown that a quick change of words can make all the difference, and who wouldn't want to turn a problem into an opportunity for growth instead? Honestly, it just seems simple when you put it like that, or easy if you prefer to think of it that way. Another tip that Morden's Stress Research Department has come up with is to watch your diet. A lot of times when any hero's just starting out, their diet can slip pretty badly as a result. If you find yourself eating out a lot, or just microwaving a meal and calling it good, try eating something green for once. Perhaps it isn't anything more than your terrible diet weighing you down after all. Gosh, these tips are so straightforward, they make me feel so responsible for living up to them almost effortlessly. Here's another great one. Try making time for family and friends more often. It's apparently easy to get into your own head, so taking a step outside your house, or more likely apartment, can do a lot of good. Not sure how much I can vouch for this one, since I've been in a relationship for a while now, and I get to see my family every other day now that I've moved back to California. It must be rough for people who don't have that kind of social structure. But then again, it's so easy to make new friends that it won't be a problem for long if you just try. Alright, one more, and then I'll move on to another famous psychic. Try picking up an exercise routine. A healthy body often leads to a healthy mind. Unless you're an Esper who metabolizes visceral fats from the body into myelin, then you may face issues with diminished powers. You may also have second thoughts about it if you've trained your mental fortitude through levitation exercises, using your own body as most do. But it's worth it to feel fit and relaxed. Just put in a few short months of exercise and you'll be on your way to normal in no time. Even though it is pretty normal for psychics to have a lackluster physique anyways, since it helps distinguish their brand while tricking enemies into underestimating them. Maybe this one's up to you, but the research is there. I guess it's a choice between being effective or happy for a lot of you out there. That's rough luck. As our experts in Morden's health department say, do not think about it, do not ask what it is. It's pretty rare to have to make that choice too, only around 10% of the population. And for visceral psychics, that's only 5% of registered Espers who have to deal with that. But don't let that get you down or feeling like you're alone and misunderstood by the majority of society. Just get out there, make some friends, and start thinking positive thoughts. It's that easy. Speaking of positive thoughts, let's look at what happens if you can't follow those refreshingly simple tips. Sid Stein, alias Scary Stories, is a well-known urban legend of New Mexico. An unhinged man living in an abandoned home, there were rumors that he could see the future, and it haunted him. The legend goes that Scary Stories would tell your future if you visited him during the dark moon. But the twist is that it'd only be for one of many futures. If he was particularly haunted, he'd grasp your hand and treat you to share in the vision, leaving the unlucky recipient of his cursed gift as jittery and frightened as Stein himself. We at Morden Insurance, in coordination with the SSPI, came to a different conclusion. He was indeed able to induce visions of a horrific nature, and he employed them to great effect to avoid being recruited on his 18th birthday. He was a strong Esper in many respects, and it's reported that many houses near Mr. Stein's residence experienced frequent shared nightmares, resulting in the neighborhood becoming mostly abandoned. He was prone to conniptions, most likely due to the toll his particular powers had on his frontal lobe. What intrigued Morden about Scary Stories, a name given to him by the locals, not the SSPI, was that his visions weren't entirely incorrect. With a 60% success rate, he was strongly pursued for integration to our risk analysis department, but when we came to make these offers, he would either be mid-conniption and too dangerous to approach, or belligerent, demanding access to nonsensical items or people like brexapiprazole or adipin. One in particular he shot for often was carbamazepine, but none of these are anything that has been developed, nor are even in development. Sadly, he wasn't able to last past his 35th birthday. Sid Stein was found deceased in his home in mid-2014. The official cause of death listed as complications with powers. He kept a journal, but it was largely illegible due to his frenzied pace, poor penmanship, and utterly nonsensical organization. But there was one final entry that must have been penned during one of his better moments. It reads, "Getting worse. No futures after Thursday. So much of them is bad or hurtful. Sometimes see nice one. Live for those. Place where no powers to make us forget about mental health. Even medicines for brain. Bad to think of, but nicer. Bye." I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our new hires from over in the medical research department for helping me out with the research on this particular case. Without his sharp eye, I would have struggled to find appropriate cases to discuss with you. So to Philemon Ovid, I thank you. It's rare that we get a new employee who's so good with research. This rodent-adjacent non-human individual, my apologies, is going places. Let's take a look ahead and see where our own understanding of the mind is going. There's been reports of a new name in the psychic world, Lily Gans, who's devoted herself to the study of her fellow Espers and your plight. The theory she's put forward is that our current understanding of psychics, and people at large for that matter, is held back by how we think about the brain. She argues that it isn't just about whose genes you inherit, which I don't need to remind you is the cornerstone of superpower research and how we at Morden and the SSPI help keep you safe, but also your upbringing and your surroundings. Naturally, there's been skeptics of this idea, both for its difficulty to prove and lack of data to back it up. So she took it upon herself to test it at length. Listeners, much like you, I wondered if perhaps she should be put in an asylum for ideas like this. What, we just didn't try talking to our heroes hard enough? Come on, that'd be too easy. But the data doesn't lie. Her patients thus far are scoring far higher on aptitude tests and happiness ratings, and they're on pace to retire far, far later than the national norm. We at Morden Insurance will be keeping an eye on this data, because sometimes your health comes before your insurance. Sometimes I feel like that doesn't get said enough, but you are more than your net worth. I certainly don't hear it enough, but it's undeniable. It's easy to get tricked into thinking a person, service, or item is only worth what it saves or earns you. I won't deny that I think that way myself. A lot. But the nice part is that it only takes one thing that isn't measured that way to disprove that thought. For example, there's... Well, dogs don't really work. We breed and judge them for specific qualities. Something about the friends we made along the way? Well, you can fill this one in yourself with something that you value for no specific reason. Unlike whatever valueless and profitless hobby you may have to fill your time, nobody listening to this could legally pursue Miss Gann's treatments at the moment. She made the radical choice to open her establishments in independent territories, and they're known as villain cities for a reason. From what I'm familiar with, her prices aren't unreasonable, but Morden Insurance would obviously be unable to assist with funding or scheduling appointments. Additionally, due to a few clauses Morden Insurance has introduced with its fellow competitors during our expansion to a few new cities, they are obligated to inform us any time a client's actions could interfere with Morden Insurance's federally mandated guidelines. They are independent insurers, and I'm not legally allowed to state that there would be any form of acknowledgement of these misdeeds by Morden Insurance, but I'm also morally mandated to say we likely wouldn't turn a blind eye to this. Hopefully, we have helped you aspiring and struggling Esper heroes out there to keep at it today. The next time you're feeling overwhelmed with the enormity of existence or dismayed at the simplicity of the human mind, just remember that Morden Insurance will always be over your shoulder, watching you and your incredibly valued skill set closely. Take a deep breath, keep your head clear, and remember that we need your powers. And you, of course. Thank you for listening, and remember that it's Morden Insurance. It's your insurance. Hey, Nick here. Thanks for listening. Every episode this time now, I wanted to take a moment and make it clear that my stance does not align with Morden Insurance's in this case. If you or a loved one are suffering with depression or any other mental illness, you have my deepest sympathies. Depression is possible for anyone to suffer from, and for any number of reasons, and it's not all that you are. If you're having trouble and feel like you're a threat to yourself, please consider calling the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 at any time. And remember that you are more than your depression. Therapy and a registered professional will do far, far more good than I can hear. Please prioritize yourself and your well-being.